Hello again. This is the Fantasy Sultans. He's the Hall of Famer Mike Sheck. I am Tripp Rogers. He's 3-0 in the Sultans League. He's 3-0 in the Rat League. And 0-3 in the Best Buy League. Just saying, best of times, worst of times, buddy. and if that is not a microcosm of fantasy football, I don't know what is. Because, I've got two teams. I'm 2-1. And the team I really felt good about, I'm 1-2. So, that's one of those things. I guess we set up week 4 in the NFL. This is our last week before we start buys next week. So that's something we will talk about as we move forward. We should mention our fan, Mac, lost his first fantasy game this week. I want to mention that real quick. We got to get that in there. We have to do one Mac mention per show to make sure he keeps listening. It's called subtle bribery here. Subtle bribery. Anyhow, all right, Mike, we're heading into week 4. Thoughts from week 3?
Well, Andy Dalton, Sam Darnold, and Malik Willis really shined in their quarterback week 3 performances. Jawan Jennings in San Francisco came up big for the receivers, while we're still really waiting for Bijan Robinson to have a breakout game. I mean, it's been a slow start for him, and we're just wondering what's going on here. Really wild start to the season. You mentioned the Tripp. I'm 3-0 in 2 leagues and then 0-3 in the other. And, injuries and upsets are really all over the place this season. And I really think it's leaving everybody guessing as to who to start, who to sit. You're not sure, and I think this even more than ever this year is the year of luck, I think. We always talk about fantasy being strategy, also being luck. Well,
Yeah.
You know what? I think this is the year of luck in some cases, and then in other cases, it's bad luck.
You and I are in a survivor pool that's run by our buddy Mark Blumenthal. And it's amazing, 39 people in that, and only one person has no losses, and that's Mark. I mean, I got to give him credit because, and some people, first 3 weeks, 0-3. I mean, that to me is just astonishing. I mean, that kind of explains this. And, you mentioned Jawan Jennings for the 49ers. And, I mean, there's a guy, did anybody have him in the lineup? Maybe somebody did, but nobody expected that out of him. And I don't think we're going to see it again because the 49ers offense, he did this on a week where they were really decimated in terms of injuries. And, I don't think he does that again, but I guess he is number 1 on the waiver wire. And I mean, everybody's trying to grab him at this point. And again, I don't know whether he's going to have benefits for you at this point, or if he's going to do as good as that. Now, the other thing you mentioned about week 3, and you talked about how crazy things were. The New Orleans offense came down to earth. Alvin Kamara came down to earth. The New York Giants won a game, and Malik Neighbors really, he is going to be a force in fantasy. And I mean, every time you turn around, you kept hearing the name OBJ. And I think that's a great comparison to him. I hope he doesn't end up like OBJ because I think that was one of the reasons OBJ is a me guy. And, we're talking about a player who very talented when he came on the scene. But I mean, he wore out his welcome in New York, and he has worn out his welcome elsewhere. I mean, he won the Super Bowl with the Rams and he got that, but it's all about OBJ and the fact he signed with Miami, hasn't played yet. And the Miami offense is just, I mean, Skylar Thompson's injured now. We may have maybe Tyler Huntley time, and we'll talk about that a little bit. And I think because that's another fantasy story we need to address at this point. But how about, I mean, did we really expect to be talking about, and it pains me to say it, Trevor Lawrence as the blonde-haired Daniel Jones? I mean, Monday night, how bad did they look?
Yeah.
How bad?
Yep.
And and Monday night also reminds me of something I do want to talk to you about. We'll get to that at the end of the podcast, but I think we got to kind of move on to some news and notes at this point. And I think one of the things that you mentioned is a luck factor, and you've got to have some luck this week. You've got to have some luck, period. But you also, again, injuries are playing a big part of this.
Yeah.
And Joe Mixon out. It looks like he'll be out maybe again next week, or this week, I should say. A.J. Brown is out. I think Trey McBride, tight end for the Cardinals, who's really done well, and now he's out. And again, I'm just mentioning some off the top of my head. We're going to try and help you navigate through a lot of these landmines that you've had because of all the injuries and all the problems, especially in these first 3 weeks. And we still we hear that CMC has gone to Germany to find answers, but will we see him? I mean, I don't even know. I don't even know if we'll see him before week 7, week 8. If you drafted a number 1, sorely disappointed. Sorely.
Yeah, and if you had Jordan Mason, I mean, why would we see CMC before then? I mean, if
True.
he's
True.
nursing this injury, the way Mason is performing, and the 49ers, I mean, they're not off to a good start, but we predict them to probably be a playoff team again this year. You're not going to waste, an injury or even a significant injury with McCaffrey. You sit him and see what happens, try to get him back healthy. And, when you're riding hot with Jordan Mason, why not?
I agree. I agree. But that 49er game, boy, the 49ers laid such an egg on Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, now,
Fourth
and
quarter
you
meltdown.
add,
Yep.
pardon?
A fourth quarter meltdown. Yep.
And you also throw Brock Purdy now. You throw him on the injured report. That's another player you've got to worry about. No Kittle on Sunday, no Debo. You have the CMC injury, of course, also. I mean, 49ers, that was a tough one. And again, in terms of fantasy, it's a mess right now. It really is a mess. I guess we move forward, and what we're known for, of course, is our import exports. And we have lots to say about imports and exports this week. And I'll let you go first because you are the Hall of Famer and you're 3-0 in 2 leagues. 0-3 the other.
All right, I'm going to start it up. Running back Cam Akers in Houston. Now, last week against Minnesota, Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce didn't play due to injuries. So that means that Akers could find himself in a leading role this week. 9 for 11 for backfield attempts, 8-yard receiving yard touchdown there for Cam Akers. Home game against Jacksonville this week should set Akers up to be in a far better position than he was last week. Obviously, when you're down that significant to the Vikings, you cannot run the ball. So he would not be getting the rock there in that situation. But hopefully this week, he will see more of it. All right, we go to Las Vegas and running back Alexander Madison, another import. The Raiders were steamrolled by the Panthers last week. But really, one stat stood out the most to me, and it was Madison leading Las Vegas in the carries over Zamir White. Now, Zamir White's a player that I think we all had on our radar this season for a breakout performance, but so far, not the case. I would say here, Madison is in a better situation. He will see more touches again in Cleveland this week, so he's a player that you want to grab. All right, next wide receiver, Demario Douglas in New England. I mentioned Douglas as a late round pickup in fantasy drafts, being that I thought he was going to be New England's number 1 wide receiver, and he still may well be, but a slow start from him on the season. Against the Jets, though, 7 receptions for 69 yards. New England is struggling, and at some point, we're going to Drake may take over this offense. If and when that does happen, I would say Demario Douglas is going to be getting more targets in that offense if he doesn't see them already. All right, export. And I mean, we kind of projected this because Jim Harbaugh is in his first season, but I'm going to export Justin Herbert in Los Angeles. In just 3 games, he's only thrown the ball for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. Now, he does have 4 touchdowns, but he's averaging only about 125, 150 yards per game. And that is not good for fantasy owners. Of course, they are running the ball more. They're getting success in the running game. So you kind of take the pressure off of Herbert and do what he does best, and that is Harbaugh running the football. But again, in this situation, I would definitely not want to play Herbert under the circumstances. Maybe at some point you could either send him to waivers or you could put him on your bench. But, you know, I would say put him on, send him to waivers at this point because there are far better quarterbacks that you can utilize. All right. Finally,
and one other thing real quick.
Ezekiel Elliott. Yep.
One other thing I wanted to throw in there is keep in mind also if you've got Hurts or Mahomes, they have buys in the next couple of weeks. So if you happen to have him, you may want to hang on to him for that.
All right, and finally,
we're choking you up. You're getting choked up with all these things.
I am getting choked up. I am fired up, right? But Ezekiel Elliott in Dallas. Hey, this is live TV, folks.
there's a guy to get choked up about. There you go.
Ezekiel Elliott in Dallas. Yeah, he's a guy to get choked up about. He has done nothing so far this season. Rico Suave Dualel, he is getting more touches than Ezekiel Elliott. And at this point, he is not a player that I want on my roster. And of course, I think Dallas thought he would have a resurgence. They bring him back and he would do better, but no, that's not the case.
But Dallas has other issues on that offense. That offensive line is terrible. I think CeeDee Lamb has not performed well. Dak, of course, with the big contract. And this is not a good team. This is not a good team. Well, yeah, they made it interesting against Baltimore, but I just, Thursday night they play the Giants. And, this was, I heard this and I did not realize this. This is the first time that Dallas is playing an away game on 3 days rest. This is the first time they've done that.
Yes.
And I thought about that. I'm like going, wow, that's true because they always host Thanksgiving. So that Thursday, that's always a Thursday for them, but it's a home game. But this is the first time they've had to travel and play on 3 days rest. It's going to be very interesting to see. I just want to throw that in there about Dallas. Okay, import exports. I'll start with exports. How about that? In Tampa Bay, Rachaad White. Now, I was high on White this year because last year he was good. But this Tampa team, Rachaad White just is not getting it done. And that also plays into my first import, Bucky Irving for Tampa Bay. Part of the problem is he is going to see an uptick in his carries and in his plays because of the fact, and Todd Bowles said it this week, he's doing better. He's going to get an uptick because he's performing. Rachaad White is not performing in this offense. Tampa Bay stumbled on Sunday. They did okay the first 2 games, but look for Bucky Irving, and if he is available, and he is available in a lot of leagues, scoop him up. He is somebody you're going to want. And again, he'll give you some bench depth. And Rachaad White, as I say, is not performing. So you may want to think about, if you have Rachaad White, you got to get Bucky Irving. You got to have the 2. I mean, there's a handcuff right there. All right. Here's another guy who is starting to usurp plays from an established back, Roschon Johnson in Chicago. Now, first of all, let's deal with Chicago. Matt Eberflus, HBO deserves an Emmy because they edited it and made Matt Eberflus look like he knew what he was doing. Okay? That team is not good. The offensive line is terrible. Caleb Williams is under duress. He is not performing well. And a lot of people thought he was the most pro-ready quarterback to come into the league this year, but he's not done well. The Chicago receivers, no, not happening. But in the backfield, Roshan Johnson is getting carries, he's getting the rock, and he's getting the job done. And the other side of it is DeAndre Swift, they gave the big contract to and signed him, but let's be realistic here. Some teams do make mistakes, give big contracts to guys, and I regret those contracts. DeAndre Swift did not do well. I mean, he did okay in Philadelphia last year. He was okay in Detroit, excuse me. But he's not performing in Chicago. Roshan Johnson's going to get a lot of carries, and he's somebody who is available and I would want to pick up. And last but not least, the Los Angeles Rams. We talked about that game with San Francisco. And that game with San Francisco, I could not believe that the Rams came back on him. But more importantly, no Cooper Kupp and no Puka Nacua. Tutu Atwell, forgot last year, he had a pretty decent year, and he's kind of the forgotten man. Now, Kyron Williams did not perform that well in this game. Matt Stafford was the one who kind of carried them down the stretch in this big comeback. Tutu Atwell was a guy. He is also available in a lot of leagues. He is somebody I would recommend as an import. And those are our import-exports for this week here on the Fantasy Sultans. Now, Mike, I got to ask you this question. I asked this of somebody else who's a big fantasy football player. 1 or 2 games on Monday night. Which do you prefer and why? So I will ask you, or do you want me to go first? Because I just sprung that on you.
No, I can go first.
Good.
No, I can go first. I mean, I would honestly prefer one game on a Monday night. I just think that for the viewing experience, I mean, they've kind of separated with an hour's difference with the start time. But I just think from a viewer perspective, one game on a Monday night is better, I think. If you had the game a little bit more of a separation, then maybe you could do 2 games on a Monday. But then the factor is, how late are you going to bed on a Monday night too? You know, we used to have the double headers. They used to, you know, at the beginning of the season, they would open it up around, you'd have a 7:00 game and a 10:00 game. It wouldn't be over till 1 a.m. I mean, I would be okay with that, but of course, a lot of people, you know, that doesn't fly over big, you know, because most people are going to bed by 11 o'clock at night. They got work the next morning. You know, that could be a little bit taxing on you, but definitely for certain, I would go with the one game.
Now, I'm going to take the opposite view. I think 2 games on Monday, not a bad idea. And
Okay.
the reason is because the situation that occurred on the first Monday of the season, you had CMC all of a sudden was inactive, and nobody saw it coming, and you had no clue, and either you rushed out and the problem was it was the last game of the weekend, and you were scrambling to get someone, and again, chances are you couldn't fill that. You took a goose egg. With two games, that's 4 teams to choose from. If you get one of those late inactives, you can cover yourself. You have a better chance of covering yourself or moving players around in your lineup. That's the only reason why I like it. But the other part of it is, though, and again, Monday night is a special night. You want to watch one game. I think you want to concentrate on the one game. I agree with you that, but I just figured I would throw that in there real quick. The other thing we got to talk about, and we mentioned it real quick, the buys are starting next week. You have week 5 buys. You're going to start having buys, and we preach this. I mean, we should list the Fantasy Sultans commandments. You know, the Fantasy Sultans commandments of fantasy football. And one of the commandments we always say, work a week ahead. Try to work a week ahead, especially if you have one kicker, one defense. You don't want to carry 2, and also one tight end in most parts too. You don't want to carry 2, but if you do, you want to pick them up and you want to be able to interchange the parts. The quarterbacks, if you listen to us, and you should have, if you
Mhm.
have an early buy, you picked up a second quarterback in your draft. Smart move. But if that quarterback is Trevor Lawrence, then I don't know if it was a smart move. But you have to play the hand you're dealt, but think a week ahead. You've got to look ahead. If you've got Jalen Hurts, you got a buy coming next week. You got Patrick Mahomes, you got a buy coming up quick. You got to think about a quarterback.
Yep.
Now you can pick up a streamer that week and stuff, but you still got to work ahead. And the other thing I wanted to throw in there real quick is, and we've seen this a couple of times, these late week injuries, these players popping up on the injury report on Saturday and on Friday. You have got to check what's going on Saturday morning, because again, if you have to go to the waiver wire and pick up somebody, if somebody shows up and has an injury on Friday and is on your roster and you're starting lineup, you need to juggle somebody around, or you need to pick up somebody, you can do that. And don't sit there and think, oh, well, I missed out on these guys. You can still get some people on the waiver wire. And I think that's really important to think about going forward.
Well, I will piggyback on your statement about planning ahead with week 5 buys coming up. I mean, Jalen Hurts and Jared Goff. What about Bo Nix? I mean, he would be a definite. The way he played last week, I would definitely want to. I'd be comfortable playing him as a streamer next week. I mean, of course, you want to have a solid backup, but hey, the way he's performing, I mean, at the beginning of the year, I don't know if we expected him to perform this well, but last week had a kind of breakout performance. So I would definitely be comfortable drafting him on and putting him in the lineup. Or what about Sam Laporta on the tight end situation? Of course, next week they're on a bye week. So in that situation, why not Cole Kmet in Chicago? I mean, they're passing the ball a lot more in Chicago because the ground game's not working. So he would be a player to definitely pick up as well. And again, like you said, work a week ahead. Pick up these players now before your opponent does.
Of course, keep in mind, we give you the information you need. We drop our podcast Thursday mornings at 9:00, but we now have a radio show Sunday mornings, or Sunday at high noon. Michael, tell us where people can listen to the Fantasy Sultans.
Yep. Yes, you can listen on 93.5, the new Fox Sports Radio New Jersey, Fox Sports Radio Jersey Shore. That's 1450 AM. And of course, at the Jersey Shore, like I mentioned, on 100.1 HD3, 100.5, and 95.9 HD3. Of course, we're all over the board. Plus, we're also online at foxsportsradionewjersey.com.
Yes, we are. And of course, just a reminder, you can listen to my podcast, Tripp's Take. It's also available the same spots you find this, Spotify for podcasters, and YouTube. Just search for Tripp's Take. Like the music of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, hey, WTRSradio.com online will give you some great tunes, and you'll catch the music yearbook with yours truly here, and lots of other great shows too. We're the ones, we're giving. We are giving. We're giving you the info. We're giving you our expertise. He's 3-0 in 2 leagues. It's also 1-3. Just keep that in mind. You gotta kind of balance it here, but we're helping you out.
Well, wait. Can you change that statement? He's 3-0 in 2 leagues. Done.
3-0 in 2 leagues. He's the Hall of Famer. You are not. We're here to help you. We are the Fantasy Sultans.
And you are not.